Hey everybody, I'm Christy Wilson, BCBA and the creator of the Ascend RBT assessment system. This system was built by a BCBA for BCBAs, those of us looking to streamline and individualize our RBT supervision without sacrificing quality. It's designed to minimize response effort while promoting high quality, data-informed supervision practices that reduce burnout, improve consistency, and align with the BACB supervision standards. The Ascend RBT assessment system consists of 10 targeted assessment tools, each designed to help you evaluate professional skills and guide meaningful supervision. These tools are meant to work in tandem with the Ascend RBT supervision template, creating a complete system for planning, goal setting, and accountability throughout the supervision process. Let's take a look at your Ascend RBT assessment. First, we have our overview and instructions page. So you can see here a visual that helps understand how all of these documents work together. So we're going to start at the bottom and ascend up the steps as we complete the process. So first, we're going to complete the assessment, review the score, prioritize the skills that we're going to address, and then utilize any sub-assessments that are necessary. From there, we set goals and then we track progress. This track progress really goes into that Ascend RBT supervision template. On the instructions page, you can see that, remember these colors here, they're going to correlate to each of the lines to give you a little bit more in detail information about what each of the tabs includes. So for each of the 10 different assessment topics, you're going to see a 10-point rating scale for both the RBT self-assessment and supervisor evaluation. We're going to also look at visual graphs to identify alignment or perception gaps, a skill prioritization sheet to determine each of the highest needs, sub-assessments to explore weak areas more deeply, and a goal bank with sample supervision targets. So you're going to see on your first main page, you're going to see the topic at the top and each subtopic of the assessment. There's going to be 5 subtopics for each of the one topic of the 10 assessment tools. You're going to have the RBT self-assessment section here and the supervisor assessment section there. So I want you to note the data that I put in for an example, I did both the initial and the reassessment so that we could look at how the data looked on each of the graphs. But you're obviously going to do the initial together with the RBT and your ratings comparatively. For each of the 5 topics, you're going to look at the rating scale 1 through 10 to identify where you feel best hits where the RBT is. There is a 10-point scale to really grasp a more specific rating of where your RBT's performance is. You'll also notice the different colors that you see correlated to the rating scale. You're going to see a total column with also some more colors over here that correlate to, at the bottom, the ratings and recommendations scale, all the way from 1 to 10 also. So where you see some of those warmer colors like the reds and oranges is going to be lower in your scale. So you're going to start here to assess each of these particular sections. Where you identify the lower, or really anything below 80% is the recommendation, there may be a recommendation for looking at prioritizing further need and sub-assessment. So you can next go to take a look at your graphed scores. So there are a number of different graphs available before we move on to our prioritization sheet. Let's look at those. So let's take a look at our graph scores. So here is a graph that has all of our data on it. We can see that there's the RBT initial, the supervisor initial, the RBT reassessment, the supervisor reassessment. So once you have done an initial and a reassessment, you're going to see all the data here. There's also a graph for the RBT self-assessment data. So this compares the RBT initial and RBT reassessment self-assessments. You're going to see the same for the supervisor initial and the supervisor reassessment to compare those graphs together. This initial assessment graph looks at the initial assessment comparing the RBT and the supervisor. And the reassessment does the same, comparing the RBT and the supervisor assessment data. Next, we're going to go to our skill prioritization sheet. So we saw on our main topic that our lowest areas rated were monitoring the client behavior and engagement in real time and recognizing environment and safety cues. So in this prioritization worksheet, you're going to work together with your RBT to rate the lowest or the each of the growth areas based on what the RBT's interest and motivation is related to that topic, how often the skills used, the severity of impact, impact on the client outcomes, and time sensitivity of addressing this particular concern that showed up in your assessment. Just like the previous pages, there's a color scale that help you identify priority from high, medium to low. So when there are higher scores in your prioritization sheet, that is going to indicate a higher need and really point you in the direction of where to go next. You're going to see different navigations throughout this document that help you jump from page to page that you need to go. So once you have identified, hey, monitoring client behavior is going to be our first sub-assessment that we're going to utilize, right here is an easy link to go right to that sub-assessment for you. So here we've made it to the monitoring client behavior and engagement in real time sub-assessment. In each of the sub-assessments, each of the 5 topics has a corresponding sub-assessment. You're going to see 10 different particular behaviors that lead to that particular target behavior of the sub-assessment. So it's breaking down this topic into a little bit more specific behaviors so that you will take a deeper look into the RBT's behaviors to pinpoint where do we need work specifically when it comes to monitoring client behavior and engagement in real time. So you're going to see a rating scale again. Work with your RBT to provide these rating scales, which are further going to identify points of need that you can look at goal setting around specifically. So we can see that adjusts approach based on client behavior and demonstrates professional judgment during live sessions ended up being our 2 lowest. So again, it is recommended that we move on to look at some goal setting. Up here, we do have a 10-point scale again as we look at each of these, and your rating scale can be identified here at the bottom. So when you've identified each of these subtasks that you want to goal set around, you can then navigate to the sample goal setting for each of the sub-assessments. So again, you've got the main topic with 5 topics breaking it down. Each of the 5 topics in your sub-assessments gets broken down into 10 topics, and each of those 10 topics have suggested sample goals to pair with them based on the ratings of your assessment with your RBT. So this offers you sample and example goals. Now, you don't have to use these goals, but they are certainly examples for you that you can use to make it more easy, less response effort, and efficient for your RBT supervision practice. Ultimately, you're going to make sure that whatever goals you create are in the best interest of you and your RBT. So again, like I said, there is a lot of navigation throughout this document. So if we are in our sample goals here and we want to go back to the sub-assessment, we have a link to do that here. If we want to go back to the skill prioritization sheet, we have a link to do that here. I want you to note on the bottom how they flow. Also, you've got your sub-assessment and your goal sheet, your sub-assessment and your goal sheet. And it goes on for the sub-assessment and the goal sheets all the way covering those 5 topics as well. So you might be asking, why Google Sheets? The Ascend assessment system is built in Google Sheets to ensure ease of its use, transparency, and functional collaboration between supervisor and RBT. You've got the opportunity for real-time editing and commenting. There are pre-built formulas and drop-downs to streamline scoring, auto-generated graphs for immediate visual feedback, duplicated ready templates that you can individualize for each of your RBTs. And my personal favorite, cloud-based access. From any device, anywhere, you can pull up your RBT assessment package. And please remember that these are not HIPAA approved, HIPAA compliant documents. So please do not include any HIPAA protected PHI data at all anywhere in these assessment tools. Let's look at some quick tips for success. If you look at the scope of a year and how you want to contribute to your annual review process, you could feasibly do about 1 assessment per month at a suggested pacing model. And that leaves you a little bit of wiggle room to reassess or utilize your goals more effectively throughout the scope of a year while still being able to provide input towards your annual review. We really want to work with our RBTs to encourage honest self-rating to promote transparency and reflection. Focus your supervision time on priority areas and use goal setting to save time. Why review something that has a higher score and more effectiveness and efficiency if you don't need to, when you can focus on lower scored areas of concern? And reassess as needed, using the same tool to monitor growth comparatively. For each of your RBTs, you're going to have one package. You're going to have each of the 10 assessment tools plus your RBT supervision document. In closing, the Ascend RBT assessment system helps you shift from reactive supervision to a proactive data-informed experience that empowers both your RBTs and you as a supervisor. This system isn't just efficient, it's transformational. Thanks for watching. Now let's get you moving towards your supervision, working smarter, not harder, with the Ascend RBT assessment system.